Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the Budapest Fashion Tech Summit for having me. Very happy to take after Stefan. My name is Marie-Pierre Schickel. I am French, and I will try to bring you my perspective today, which is a mix from my past experiences as a brand strategist, as a startup mentor and advisor, as baby business angel, which is something I started to do two years ago, and as an educator, because I've been teaching fashion and luxury brand management over the last 10 years. So the topic I was given today, hopefully if I can cover it in 20 minutes, is how to build meaningful and viable fashion brands. So I will try to focus on the main things. As a strategist, I always like to take a long view on things, okay, and to step back a little bit in order to better, let's say, strategize for the future. A few things have changed in the industry, if you have noticed, and I'm not referring to the last few months, okay? This is typical French understatement. So what has changed? The first thing is that in just 25 years, this industry went from a small select club of family businesses with completely different competition dynamics and industry dynamics to a very mature industry with a high, tough competition, globalized market, and consolidated players. And this, of course, has brought about a lot of disruptions. And I think it's something important to keep in mind, because even though the numbers I kept were the numbers from last year, we all know that this pandemic is going to take a hit of about 30% of the numbers. I think it's important to understand where we came from. Another thing that happened is that digital invited itself at the table and created countless and endless disruption, some of which are flipped consumer brand relationship, infinite fragments, channel fragments, customer segment, communication channel segment. More importantly, fashion brands went from being product and retail focused to client focused, media and entertainment companies. And then of course, constant newness, this rush for constant freshness, new business models we've heard about already today, and new ecosystems. So what do we have now? We have a weird and exciting galaxy of brands. We have insurgent brand rubbing elbows with heritage brands that have been around for 30, 50, 100 years, and also brands that have just around from a few seasons, and some of them which are just high brands that will go away after a few seasons. Another big change, and I like this expression, I'm happily borrowing from an editorial of 2 years ago of the 032C magazine, which was the big flat now. What was it meaning? It was meaning exactly what Jorge in this quote was saying, that the youth today doesn't really care about the boundaries between the different disciplines, and that the definition that we had, my generation had, don't really apply, that there is a great equalizing playing field of the digital age. And I would argue that it's not just for the youth, okay? Gen Z, Gen Y, Alpha, give them the name you want. Now it's applying to everyone. Everyone from any generation, being also influenced by the youth, is living, working, wanting, shopping, and being very differently. So let's go back to the topic now, how to be viable and how to be meaningful. I think that the previous key to viability, and it's still valid today, was the alliance of creativity and business. Why? Because if you don't have creativity, you don't have desirability and you cannot build any brand. If you don't have sound business practices and a sound business model, you don't have a company, and so you don't have viability. Examples abound among the heritage brand of great, let's say, couples now between the CEO and the creative at the helm of of so many brands. So now one example is Saint Laurent. Another example that we are all very knowledgeable about is Gucci with the CEO and the creative director. But I would argue that it's the same thing for younger brands. Here, let's take a look at two examples. This is an Italian brand. It's a very innovative shoe brand, ACBC, anything can be changed. And this is also the couple at the helm of the company. Joe is the CEO with extensive background, business background, and it's his creative director, Eduardo, with also multiple consultancy experiences in the past. And I think the message here, importantly, is to say, surround yourself with complementary people, because you will need, again, these highly complementary skills of business and creativity. But also, if you look at the two brothers, the Calza brothers, okay, of GCDS, I don't know what it is about Italian brands now that apparently have to use acronyms as their brand. God cannot destroy streetwear. Listen to what they say in a recent interview. Working in fashion, we need to prepare to go up and to go down, not only to simply keep the company alive, but to sustain the company's continued growth. There has to be a balance in what the creative team does and a balance of what the market wants to see, which I think, again, is just showing how important a good balance is. But what has been going on between creative imperatives and business imperatives is that they've been just multiplying. And even though we're all craving for getting to slower paces, my take is that it's not going to completely change because the market and your customer are going to continue to evolve very quickly. Just look at Asia. So creative imperatives have been multiplying now because you need to keep this desirability, you need to be more audacious, you need to keep constant freshness, you're looking for constant, innumerous collaborations. You have to produce so much content, you have to learn new languages for new platforms, new crafts and new tech. But the same thing is true for business imperative. Even as a young brand, okay, there's this drive, even if you can reduce your collection, to launch new product. Because every week or every month, your customers might want new product. Multiple categories, because if you want to extend your brand territory, you have to launch into new categories. Multi-markets, I think it's difficult for a brand to think that they can become viable and grow if they stay local. At some point, very quick, they have to grow internationally. Multi-channels, okay? So we heard that now you can do away with wholesale, but you need to be on different platforms. Because again, that's what your customer is doing, buying from multiple platforms. So I would argue that, yes, an alliance between creativity and business, but definitely with what has been going on over the last 10 years, business has probably become a little bit predominant. So the question is what's going on now for the future? So these are 5 pillars that my opinion, again, as my observatory desk, as again, now a mix of educator and business angel and investor and mentor, I think are very important for the future. The first one is meaning, but meaning saying build meaning, build impact as a core asset of your business model. It's okay to do lots of initiatives, okay, that can be meaningful, but it's super important to build it as an asset, to strategize it and include it in your strategy. Why? Because as it's been discussed many times, we are in a so-called post-aspirational or aspirational period, okay? So what does it mean? It means that consumers want to hear about your values, they want to hear about opinions on top of the things that have been developing and accumulating in the past. So on top of quality, on top of providing benefits and experiences and self-identification tools. And they want you to cater to the communities. Communities, not just fans and clients, but communities of stakeholders, okay? From your suppliers to your stakeholders, etc. Brands are part of the problem, we know it, okay? So they are increasingly expected to be part of the solution now. This is a quote from Glen Martin's, okay, discussing also about the new line, the new sustainable line, evergreen line that he wanted to build. We have the luxury of time to think, which entitles us to a responsibility. We want to be part of the change, building a better future. So what happened in the last 10 months is that brands had to hit hard the stop button. And so having this time to think, there's really no excuse now to postpone and to really try to see what you can do differently. So going back to ACBC, for instance, what happened to them over the last few months? They decided to become a benefit company, not yet a B Corp, but a social benefit company. As again, the CEO is saying, as the demonstration that there is a more conscious way of doing business and that sustainability leads to having a business model that is more ethical and functional to the needs of society. So what do we have now? We used to have now the big balance between viability and desirability, business and creativity. I would argue that now we have impact as the third element in this cycle. So not just the brand purpose that many brands, all of us in branding know that now brand purpose is something that is going on. Now we are about self-identity, self-expression, we are about self-realization, but you need a very strong corporate purpose. And again, you need to build it as an asset, as a strategy. Many of you might know that investors are rewarding companies, okay, that are respecting ESG criteria, so environment, sustainable, and governance. This is just an example. It was a survey made among business angels, Italian business angels, so a smaller community of 2,000 people. And what is interesting here is the data that you can look at on the left-hand side. 66%, so 2 out of 3 investors in Italy, business angel, declare themselves to be either hybrid or impact-oriented investors. Why? Because as an investor, you don't invest for tomorrow. You don't invest in good product and great storytelling. You invest, we are patient investors, as we call ourselves. You invest for the next 4 to 5 years, and the world will have completely changed, and sustainability and ESG criteria are going to be a big thing in 5 years from now, even if we're not there yet. So again, as investors, we look at that when we look at, you know, which companies to pick. So my hope, but my guess is that, again, we're going to see a rebalance between creativity and business, but also meaning being at the center. Second pillar, customers, okay, what I call the 10 customer commandments. You might say, okay, we all know our customers, okay? The challenge is from this picture is, as you can see, heritage brands, especially less younger brands, but it's going to happen to them in the future as well, is that you have 5 generations of consumers at the same moment. So it's getting complicated to know their expectation and their needs because it's so diverse. It's not the demographics, stupid. I know, okay? I teach in schools, and brands, fashion brands are great at making sophisticated customer personas. What do they like? What do they want? But I guarantee you that when I do brand consultancies for many brands, many of them don't know truly and deeply their customers. Not knowing your customers in 2020 is what I call a deadly sin. You have so many tools at your disposal. This is an example from American Eagle, which I think very interesting. So on top of consumer research and focus group that many brands do, you also have people who say that maybe focus group are not really useful. They created an internal board made up of teenagers and 20s who helped them with the decision-making process to really put themselves in the shoes of who their stakeholders and consumers are. Strategy, for me, rhymes with empathy. And I would say that strategy, also business strategy, starts with empathy. So know your 10 customer commandments, okay? Articulate them and act on them. Just an example. This is La Letri La Chapelle. It's a dairy store in Paris. Everything is transparent. You can see the production process from the street. You can see the storage. You can see the store. Nothing to hide. Another example, in Cologne at the Ludwig Museum. They're having an exhibition right now where they're completely open about the mistakes in valuation that they did, ending up buying fakes, okay? Nothing to hide. This example is the impact receipt from Asket, okay, where they're trying to highlight now the impact in CO2 on all the elements, now from manufacturing to logistics, etc. Nothing to hide. So wherever you look at, whatever industry outside of fashion, there's nothing to hide. So I would urge those brands that are still not necessarily believing transparency or not acting on them. And I'm asking them, can you believe transparency can wait? So I would argue that transparency is one of your 10 user, client and customer commandments. Might be a bit different depending on the brands and the maturity of your brands. Third element, agility. You have to build agility at the core of your business model as well. Continuous innovation. It's not just now because of the pandemic. You've seen what I told you before about the past of the industry. Things get acceleration, everything is accelerated, everything keeps changing. So you will need to have this mentality of re-engineering and fine-tuning your business all the time, not just now and not just tomorrow. So this was a quote from the CEO of Balenciaga. The customer responds the way they want, when they want. It's not like you can really plan how to. They are just faster and quicker, and we've got to be too. Agility and innovation in fashion, of course, it comes natural when you talk about collections and products, but everywhere, from customer services to your supply chain, to your retail and distribution channel, to your HR practices, I would also say. But we are open-minded. We constantly innovate. Of course, you're creative people, you're designer, or your managers working with creative people. Yes, you are open-minded, but sometimes fashion is not that open-minded. This is the latest foray in luxury by Amazon. Not a few people got on board, but I really like this comment from Roland Mouret, who was among the few brands who jumped on the platform. He was reminding us that 20 years ago, he was among the first one with Manolo Blahnik to jump on Net-a-Porter. I mean, Net-a-Porter now, of course, it's a no-brainer. 20 years ago, he was talking about a kind of snobbery that the other brands had, saying, no, you will never be able to sell luxury online. And he's claiming that there's a little bit of this snobbery again at play today. And I cannot disagree with him. So again, yes, you are open-minded. You need to become even more open-minded. So adopt a try and test mindset to build an anti-fragile business. The following example is this bag brand from New York. They were manufactured in Korea, and they had this try and test mindset and quick pivoting during the pandemic. They were manufactured in Korea. When all the stores were closed in Europe, they say, why can't we sell in Korea, which has resumed with its commercial activity? And this is what they did. They developed some partnership to be able to be distributed in Korea. Fourth element, funding. You have to know your options when it comes to funding. Why? Because yes, you start small and small is beautiful, but small is not viable anymore. As I mentioned, now more product line, more markets. You need to grow if you want to remain viable. You need to grow at a certain scale, and you will need investment to be able to support that growth. So it was not only heritage brand that used to open stores and then more marketing competencies that are all requiring money. The same goes for younger brand. This is an example, a screenshot from Sunai, an Italian brand. So this is the array of product categories that they have. It requires investment. This is again, oops, the clicker stopped. This is a quote again from Glen Martin's, okay, highlighting how expensive it is for a small team and a small brand when they want to implement sustainable lines, because they have to go through this research and traveling. And we had great example from Maha Hoffman earlier in the panel. So you want to be sustainable, it requires investment. And then when you grow, you need more skills and competencies. So this was now the ex-founder of Gani who was saying that at some point in time, I knew we needed a partner. So fashion is increasingly a highly fixed cost business, where at some point, the only option is to keep growing, even if at a slow pace. So I'm not an advocate of fast growth. I would be playing the devil's advocate here. But what I'm saying is like, let's face it, okay? You cannot just remain small, otherwise you're not becoming a company and a brand. So you have many options, okay, to get support and to get funding, depending on where you are on your development stage. We just had a great testimony from Not Just a Label, Moda Operandi, and a few names that you all know from the industry, okay, that are here to help you. But you have an increasingly diverse ecosystem that can also help you. This is Dress You Can, a rental platform in Italy who was on crowdfunding on the platform in Italy just a few weeks ago. Again, this is Kite, an innovative lingerie e-commerce brand that has just completed a round of 800,000 euros amongst a series of business angel and Italian partners. This is again ACBC. They started on Kickstarter, then they won on Be Heroes 300K, and then just completed a bigger round this last August for more than 2 million. Again, non-traditional partners, not necessarily from in the fashion industry. And then when you get bigger, you have those examples of brands who had now bigger investment from bigger players. And in the last 40 seconds I have, my last, let's say, recommendation: ecosystem, alliances, and new contamination. I cannot say it better than Paul Polma. Find new forms of partnership. In this fashion industry, people are not used to working together. Things are changing because of the pandemic, but they need to change faster. It's not just about collaboration, okay? This is Marine Serre and Gelatin Monster, great. But it's the magic of distributed power, no? Stealing a bit from Kotler and his acolyte in their last book. Example of Levi's. At the beginning, they sued the company that was using their jeans to recycle, and then they decided to partner with them. Or the common neighborhood, okay, helping a department store in New York, helping smaller brands. And the biggest of all, okay, you cannot do everything on your own. The world is just too complex. So partner, just like Farfetch, Alibaba, Richemont, and Artemis did. They were staunch competitors. So if they do it, you have to do it. So I'd like to finish with my 5 key takeaways. Build meaning as an asset. Strategy starts with empathy. Build change at the core. Funding is part of your strategy. And think ecosystem. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to answering your question in the panel.